Hello, and welcome to the HTML5 lecture series at SNHU. I'm Tom Adamson, visiting professor. What I'd like to do is to help get you started is look at the screen here, and I'd like to demonstrate some stuff on the screen. What you see here, this was made by Evan Wallace, and I guess you can see his name up here. And this is actually a 3D image done using HTML5 techniques. Notice I can move the image around. It's got water at the top. I can come in here and I can ripple the water. I'm moving my mouse around the water now, and there's the water rippling. I can also come here and I can hit the G key to make gravity, and now the ball comes up and I can grab the ball, and there it is. All this, by the way, was done in, the coding on this is all JavaScript. And you know, if you do JavaScript, you can edit it using a simple text editor like Notepad. As I scroll around here, I can change the lighting direction, L for light, and see I changed the lighting direction. If I come down here, what I have is if I come here to an editor, this is a 3D editor. It allows me to create models, and I can use these models in games or virtual realities. I can take these models and I can animate them. This whole thing is absolutely free. We're going to be talking about this in this part of our series on HTML5, where you get this, how you use it. There's another one here that is a face rig, and this face rig is part of Chrome Experiments, and it's by David Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E, and we're going to launch the experiment on this. And this is all done in HTML5. All the code on this is JavaScript, and of course, if it's JavaScript, it's all simple text. I can make it so that his lips sync, so like if he's talking, okay? All right, there's his lip syncing. I can make it so that he can do a jaw twist. I can make it so he can do a lip curl, okay? And of course, he's looking at me. And then I can do a regular face, and this face here, again, is right through a browser. And it uses JavaScript is the code, and all the textures and everything on the face. It looks really pretty neat. Here is a Photoshop lookalike and called ChromePad, and it's totally free, and it's done in HTML5. Its main programming language is JavaScript, and again, it can be modified and what have you using a simple text editor. So that's what we're leading up to. What I'd like to start out with is something rather simple, and we're going to be learning how to do something like this. As I move the mouse over this, notice it twists and it faces me. Move the mouse away, it goes away. It twists back. And the code to do this is right on the front of it. That's the only code that was necessary to make this happen. And we'll see how to do that. So I've done a 2D image, and I've made it into a 3D environment. Here's another one. This is a cube, a 3D cube now. This was all done in CSS3, and we're going to be talking about CSS3 in this series. So with that said, what I'm going to do is minimize this, and I'm going to come to the board now, and I hope that got you motivated somewhat, because this is an exciting part. We now have enough background, hopefully, to start getting into stuff like this. So this is Lecture 22, CSS3 2D. So we're going to start out with a 2D environment first and learn the basics. First of all, we should be asking the question, what is CSS3? Well, it's actually the third revision of CSS by the W3C. And that's, of course, the World Wide Web Consortium. The thing about CSS3 is that it is completely... the other thing about CSS3 is that it is completely backward compatible with the current CSS recommendation. In other words, this is really cool because with all the cool stuff that CSS3 can do, it's completely backward compatible with the current CSS recommendation. So if you're using CSS3, there's nothing that you have to change on your website if you're using the old CSS. Okay, and here's how CSS3 is organized. It's actually quite a complex arrangement of tools that you can use to do 2D and 3D animations and transformations. What we have here is that CSS3 is split up into modules. And you'll see the reason for this. One of the modules is called a selector module. Another one is called the box model. Another one does borders and backgrounds. Another one does text effects. Another one does 2D and 3D transformations. Another one does animations. And there's others. The two that we're going to focus on in this next lecture part, we're going to focus on the 2D and 3D transformations and the animations. So to start out with the basics, we really can't start with animations nor with 3D. We need to start with 2D. So that's what we'll be doing, is working on the 2D stuff. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Let's start with how can we get started with doing 2D in using CSS3. Okay. We need something very basic to do 2D and 3D transforms with. We don't want to start off with moving a complex thing around the browser. We want something very, very basic so the code is simple and we can focus on the code to do the 2D and the 3D stuff. So what we're going to use the CSS box model. This is the perfect choice, and you'll see why. First of all HTML5 elements can be considered as boxes. And as we get into this, you'll see what I mean by this. All HTML elements can be considered as boxes. And the box, okay. And then there is the borders. There is the padding. And there is the content. So we need to know what these four things mean in CSS in order to create this box that we're going to now do 2D and 3D transformations on. So it consists of knowing what a margin is, what borders are, what padding is, and what content is. So I'm going to draw a diagram now to give you an idea of the box model. And we'll be using this in a lot of our demonstrations to help you learn how to do this really, really cool stuff. I think it's really, really cool. So I've got a diagram here of the box model. So let me do this right here. You'll see the reason for the dashed line. It looks like a box. Okay. And then what I have here is I've got this. And I've got this here. And then I've got this here. And bear with me, and I'll show you what these different things mean. First of all, out here on this outside, this is the margin. And I'll explain what the margin does, what the margin command does. This right in here that goes around this way, this is the border. And I'll demonstrate the border. This space in here is called the padding. P-A-D-D-I-N-G. This right in here, this is my content. Now, I don't know, if I move over here, can you still see me on the camera? Because I'm going to explain now what these different things mean. Okay, cool. All right, so the margin, what the margin does is that it clears an area around the border. It has no visibility. In other words, you can't see it. The only thing that happens is I increase the margin. This border thing moves further and further away from the top and the left of where the web page is. What the border is, it goes around the padding. And it can be styled. In other words, on the border, you can put styling. You have it solid, you could have it dash, you have an insert, you can have an outsert, you can have a graphic with little rocket ships around it if you wanted, or happy faces. Okay. The padding what the padding does is that it clears an area around the content. And the content is what you want to display. Okay, the margin, the border, the padding, the content. The margin clears an area around the border, and it isn't visible. There's nothing you can put on it. The border goes around the padding, and you can put all kinds of neat things in the border. You can make it thicker or thinner. Padding clears an area around the content, and the content is what you want the user to see. So what I'm going to need is, I'd like the camera to be leave it open. Okay, all right. All right, so what I'm going to right click now, and I'm going to come here and put new, and I'm going to come to the text document, and I'll call it example, XAMPLE 01, and I'm going to change the extension to .html. I get a warning message, I say yes, and I'm going to zoom in just a bit so you can see it better. Okay, so there's example 01.html. And if I double left click on it, there's nothing on it, as you would expect, because I haven't put any code on it yet. So I'm going to bring this over here. Whoops. That's it. So I'm going to close this one down here. Okay, and then bring this over here. Now I'm going to open this with my favorite editor, open with Notepad. Okay, I'm going to bring this over here. And I'm going to put in a doc type. And I'm going to say that it's HTML5, and that's what that means. And I'm going to put in my root element, which of course is HTML. And of course there's my body. No, that's not my body. This is the head, right? Okay. And then I need to put in the title so my search engines will find me. Okay. And this is a box model. And then I'm going to close off title. So now I have my title element. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my style. And this is automatically, whatever I tell it to do is going to be CSS3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a div element. And you'll see what I mean by that. And I'm going to put in here height, and I'm going to make the height 100 pixels, 100 px, like that. And I'm going to make the width, I'm also going to make that 100 pixels. And I'm going to make the background a color. And I'll make it red. How's that? That's pretty exciting. And that'll close off the div or division element. And you say, what is that? We haven't talked about a div element. But I'll show you what I mean. That ends my style, which is also going to end the head element. And here's the body. And right in here, I'm going to put an empty element called div for division. Okay? There's the opening tag and the closing tag. Then I'm going to come in here and close off the body element. And I'm going to go here and close off the root element, HTML. Now, and what I've got to do is come here, File, and then Save. I'm going to bring this over here. Let me close this down just a bit. Bring it over here. And now I'm going to come here and refresh this. And what do you see? You now see a red box. And basically what I've got here is I have the height of it is 100 pixels. The width is 100 pixels. And this red box I'm going to use to demonstrate 2D transitions, translations, and 2D animation. And then later I'm going to use it for 3D. Let's say I want to put something inside here. So what I do is I come here on my divisions and I can put hello. How about world? W-O-R-L-D. That's original, right? Hello world. I'm going to do a Control-S to save it. And I'm going to come over here and refresh it. And there's hello world. It might be hard for you to see it. Let me sort of zoom in. Okay. I'm zooming in. Now, if you notice here with the hello world, the H and the world are right up against this. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in a margin. Let's see what happens when I put in a margin. M-A-R-G-I-N. And the margin I'm going to say is going to be 50 px, 50 pixels. I'm going to do a Control-S to save. I'm going to come here and refresh. And did you see it move it down? So what the margin has done, the margin has all this blank area around here, as we said that it would before. The next thing we're going to put in, I'm going to put in a border. And the size of the border is going to be 10 pixels, space, and it's going to be solid. So the border was too thick, and so what I did is I just made it down to 5 pixels, and I went here and I did a file save, and I went over here to refresh, and there it is at 5 pixels. Now, the hello world is right butting up against here. So what I need to do now is I need to put in some padding. So let me put some padding in here. So I'm going to put padding, and the padding I'm going to make that say 6 pixels, like that, and do a Control-S to save it, and I'll come back over here and refresh, and now you see it's been padded so that it's not bouncing right up against there. So what I'd like to do here, stay on the screen. This right here, this area here, is the margin. And let's come back to the board here. That's what I'm talking about, the margin. Okay? And then what I did for the code for the margin, coming over here, is I just said margin colon, then how much of a margin I wanted. All right? Then the next thing I have is that this right here is the border. Okay? Coming back over here to the board, this is the border. That's what the box model means, okay? And then what I did over here on the screen is the border. I can use one command. I give the thickness of it. I say what the style is, and I say the color. There's no commas here. There's simply spaces that separates them. And that's what I get. Here's my border. Then the other thing that I get is I get the padding. And the padding is right here, 6 pixels. If we come over here on the board, this is what we're talking about the padding. And then the content actually goes here where the div tag is, where the div element, the division element is in the body. Whatever I put in here, that's going to be the content that'll appear here. It doesn't have to be text. It could be an image, could be pictures, could be a video. It could be any visible HTML element could go in here for the content. Okay, back over here on the board. So I know I spent a lot of time on this, but it's important because we're going to be using this over and over again. This is not a graphic. This is done by using CSS. But it could have been a graphic. I could have put a graphic in there as content. Okay, now let me get my notes here, and I'll go back on the board. Let's see. Pages always want to stick together. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to look at 2D transforms. In CSS3. The transforms that I have are called, one is called translate, and we'll see what this does. The other is called rotate, and that's almost self-explanatory. The other is called scale. The other is called skew. And the other is called matrix, like the movie. So these are the transforms that I have available to me in 2D in CSS3. Now, there's a slight issue with this. You say, wait a minute, this is too cool. You know, knew there had to be a problem. The slight issue with this is currently CSS3 transforms are browser specific. And you have to tell CSS3 which browsers. All right. So what the rub is that currently in CSS3 transforms are browser specific. So if I want it to work in IE, I have to tell it that. If I want it to work in Google Chrome or Firefox, I have to tell it that. So if we know how to do that, though, it'll work. So just bear with me on how we make that work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one of the transforms. There is a transform that is called rotate. We said that was one of them. And this is the number of degrees that you want it to rotate. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a 30 degrees here. Okay. And then go onto the screen, please, onto the monitor there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into CSS3 for this box model. I'm going to type in transform. And the transform I want is I want it to rotate. And I want it to rotate 30 degrees. I'm going to do a Control-S to save. And I come over here to refresh. And notice nothing happens. The reason why nothing happens is because I didn't tell it what browser I want it to work on. All right, here's what I have to do. I have to type this in, WEBKIT, and then a dash, WebKit transform rotate. I'm going to do a Control-S to save. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do a refresh. And now it's rotated 30 degrees. Now, you might say, wait a minute, Adamson, what did you pull here? If you notice, I added this right here with a dash, WebKit, and then another dash in order for it to work on Google Chrome. Coming back to the board here. Google Chrome and Safari, they have an engine that actually drives the browser, the program that drives the browser. And the name of that program is called WebKit. So the way I tell my W3, my CSS3 that I want this to work on Google Chrome and Safari, I have to tell it to use WebKit. Like that. If I wanted it to work on Internet Explorer, I would also add another line of code here, say IE, that's its engine, and use the same code, transform, rotate 30 degrees. Let's go on to the board here, and I can show you what I mean. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to do a Control-C to copy this and come here. Control-V. If I now put IE here for Internet Explorer and then Control-S to save, this will also work on Internet Explorer. It doesn't affect anything on the others. So all the different engines that I want to work on, I have to remember to put this dash in front of them. The other thing I'd like to demonstrate here is the SKEW, S-K-E-W. S-K-E-W. And I have the X, how much it's going to change, and the Y. Let me make the Y 20 degrees. And do Control S to save. I'm going to come over here and do a refresh. Okay, and then bring this up here. I'm going to scan out a bit. Now, I'm going to come back to this. What you'll notice when I do a SKEW, if you can begin to use your imagination, I can now start constructing a 3D isometric object. And with these 3D isometric objects that I have, I begin to make a scene out of it. And then with the scene begins to look like it's 3D, but really it's called 2.5D. And we're going to do some 2.5D stuff in our next lecture. But notice the only thing we had to do was this coding right here. And this coding is very straightforward. None of it is rocket science. And the stuff that I want into it, materials and stuff, images, JPEGs, and GIFs, I can put that stuff right here. And that's what we're going to pick up on our next lecture. Okay, that's it for this lecture series. Thank you for watching.